Podcast with Trey and Lee. On this podcast, you'll hear real topics about real life that cover everything from married sex to raising kids to loving your spouse so much that you're willing to forgive them for occasionally being the most annoying person in the world. Trey and Lee have raised 4 boys, been married over 30 years, and somehow still really like each other. And now, live from the metropolis of Childress, Texas, a place so flat you can watch your dog run away for 3 days. Here are your hosts for the Stronger Marriage Podcast, Trey and Lee Morgan.
Now that was pretty cool.
And somehow we still like each other.
Somehow we still like each other.
That was a pretty fun intro there.
Yeah, that was. We tried to, we had some folks that encouraged us to professionalize our intro, and that's what we came up with. And that was, I'll just admit, that was worth it. To me, that was worth the $22 that we spent on that bad boy.
Yeah, it's pretty fun.
Yeah, we may have changed that out every few months. Everybody may get tired of hearing about a place so flat that you can watch your dog run away for 3 days after a few months. But welcome to the Stronger Marriage Podcast, folks. We're glad you're here. Welcome. We are back on track. We are having fun. Last week, I don't even remember what we talked about last week. I just went blank. But last week we had a good turnout. A lot of folks listened. We appreciate that. This week we're talking sex, and that always seems to be a really popular topic on the podcast. I find it interesting on our social media formats. If we post about sex on Instagram, the little post just kind of blows up. Lots of comments, lots of shares, lots of likes. Facebook, not so much. I don't think you can quite be as anonymous and hidden on Facebook like you can on Instagram. And so a lot of folks are a little embarrassed about sharing stuff on...
Yeah, and a little bit different demographics maybe have something to do with that. So, yeah.
I think, and I think a lot of it is, and we have people oftentimes say things like, y'all talk sex a lot. We actually hadn't talked sex in about 3 months on the podcast, but it's a topic that that a lot of Christian couples don't cover, a lot of workshops don't cover, and we've kind of chosen to make it something that is important and that we're going to cover and we're going to talk about it. So we don't get too embarrassed about it anymore. And we're pretty comfortable talking about it in workshops, and we're going to talk about a bunch of stuff today. We're going to cover a lot of topics.
Yeah. Well, this is a huge part of marriage, and couples need to be educated on this kind of stuff. And it's not that we have all the answers by any means, but we've read a lot of good books on the topic, and we've gotten questions from listeners and readers on what they want to be covered, and so hopefully we can touch on some of those things today.
Yeah, this is one of the topics we get a lot of questions on is sex and things like that. And so right off the bat, let me just throw this out there. When it comes to frequency and married couples, what in studies does what is frequency? What is the average marriage couple average when it comes to sex?
Well, I think you found a statistic that says that the average married couple has sex 1 to 2 times a week.
That is true.
Which was a little surprising to me, maybe. I don't know. I think that was lower than I thought it might be. We are big fans of the book Sheet Music by Dr. Kevin Leman, and he is a psychologist. His recommendation as a psychologist is 2 to 3 times a week in his book Sheet Music. That's kind of his recommendation for married couples. So, but you always say you don't have to be average. You need to do what's best for your marriage, and that takes communication.
True. And what we mean by average is some people may look at 1 to 2 times a week and go, "Oh my goodness, we have sex 4 to 5 times a week." That's okay. There's nothing wrong with that. Some couple may be perfectly happy going, "Well, we have sex 2 to 3 times a month, Saul, and we're perfectly happy with that." And so when you look at it from that standpoint, we don't know who they polled to get this. And so we don't know if they're talking honeymooners, right. 70-year-olds.
Newlyweds or, yeah.
Yeah, and so when it's at 1 to 2 times a week, make your own average. You figure out what it is. And as Lee said, marriage and sex kind of go hand in hand. They're very important to one another, and we have quoted many times in our workshop and our social media pages that it takes more than sex to build a great marriage. It really does, but it's pretty hard to build a great marriage without it, because intimacy is what separates roommates from soulmates. It is the connection that takes place, a bonding that takes place between a husband and a wife that God created. And you may be sitting out there pumping your fist going, yeah. And your spouse may be over there going, I just don't think it's all that big a deal. And sometimes you get a lot of marriages with a mixed-matched sex drives, and there's some frustration there. And I think even us, we can tell you that sex can be one of those things that's one of the funnest things in the world in marriage, and at times can be one of the most frustrating. Yeah. And so when you can stay on the same page as a husband and wife, things work a whole lot better together.
That is true. And, we had a conversation about this not too long ago, that I noticed that we kind of start getting on each other's nerves more when it's been a while since we've been intimate. And I don't know, it seems like the longer you go without, the easier it is to go without, and the more you get on each other's nerves. Does that make sense?
That makes perfectly sense.
And so somebody finally has to say, okay, enough of this. And you may not be in the mood, but sometimes you just have to
reconnect.
Yes, you just have to reconnect. You talk about, it's like, putting the cordless phone on the little charging dock. It's sometimes it just won't make that connection to work like it's supposed to until it comes back together.
It's like restarting your phone, or sometimes you restart the Wi-Fi to make it work. It's kind of a restart.
It is.
We'll actually talk a little bit in a minute. I think we have it in our notes. Actually, it's right up here at the top.
Yeah, tell us about oxytocin. Is that where you're going?
Yes, and one of the things that God created marriage and God created sex was as a bonding agent. The two shall become one flesh. That is Genesis chapter 2. That takes place in sex, and studies have shown, it is scientifically proven, that oxytocin, which is a bonding agent, a bonding hormone between people, oxyhormone rushes through your body at different times throughout life. For women, that takes place at pregnancy when you're giving birth. Oxytocin just rushes through your body. It is God's way of making mamas go, that's my baby, and that baby's going home with me. I love that baby. When mamas breastfeed, oxytocin is flushed through a woman's body to go, this is still my baby. I love this baby. If you touch my baby, I will hurt you. And the other time that oxytocin is there for men and women is during sex. It is a bonding agent to go, this is my wife and this is my husband and I love them. And many couples miss out on that or don't understand that. Sex is a whole lot more than an orgasm. Sex is a whole lot more than this is just going to make you feel good. Sex is a bonding agent that says, hey, this is my wife and this is my husband. And I love them and I'm committed to them.
And I kind of like them again.
I like them again. And so it's not just let's get in a better mood type thing, but it's one of those things that is definitely part of it. And so you don't know what normal always is, for newlyweds. You would think newlyweds oftentimes have a whole lot more intimacy than maybe a sexual intimacy than, especially those, if you're parents right now with small children, or you've got a new baby, or you've got a new baby on the way, and maybe you're pregnant, you are great with child, then maybe it has been a little few and far between. Be patient. Things will get better. And I know you look to it and you go, hey, my kids will get bigger and things will get better. Your kids will be teenagers and they'll still be all up in your space. And you're just going to have to work really hard to find moments in your schedule and in your day to look at one another and go, hey, all our kids are currently out of the house for at least 15 minutes. And it may not be planned and it may not be anything you've talked about. You just kind of look at each other and go, hey, we got 15 minutes. And I'll meet you in the bedroom or whatever it is. And so you just kind of have to work that way to where, yes, you look for opportunities. You don't always find time to be intimate. You have to make time. So you decide what normal is. And one of the things, we've mentioned this before, we'll mention it again since this is the topic today. This is really, really important. Frequency when it comes to intimacy, sexual intimacy in your marriage, should be a mutual agreement between the husband and a wife. And what we mean is, a lot of times in a lot of marriages, it is the person with the lower sex drive that may be the one pumping the brakes. And the person with the lower sex drive should not be the gatekeeper on the amount of sex that's happening in the marriage. It should be a meet in the middle thing. And if you've got, maybe the wife has a higher sex drive and she's over here going, I'd like 4 times a week, and a husband's over here saying, I would like 2 times a week, then maybe 3 times a week is what you need to shoot for. But the best thing you can do by far is communicate about that.
Yes. Communicate and compromise.
Yep. Every couple is different, and depending on where you are in your marriage. And so empty nesters that have more time may find it a whole lot easier to have more intimacy right now. And so that's the good thing. And that's what you got to figure out how to make work. There are different reasons that God has created sex. We talked a little bit about the bonding agent. We understand it is for procreation. It's for creating kiddos. We're pretty good at that. Most folks are. That comes pretty natural. It's for comfort. It's for oneness, and it's for pleasure. God actually, there's a lot of people, I've met a lot of people online that sends questions going, now sex is just for procreation, right? And we're like, whoa, no, there's a whole lot more to sex than just having kids. It is also for pleasure. God said, you can enjoy this for pleasure, which is pretty incredible. And I think I can mention this. We're all adults and we're listening, and this is not anything you haven't ever heard probably, but there are 3,000 nerve endings in a woman's clitoris. And the only reason that God put that on her body is for pleasure. It has no other function. And so obviously God is all about enjoy your spouse. This is for pleasure.
That's right. And you briefly mentioned a while ago, some wives have a higher sex drive. 23%, I believe, maybe the latest statistic on that. 23% of women have a higher sex drive than their husbands. So it's not the majority by any means, but we do want to address that. Usually in our workshops, we're talking more about the men have a higher sex drive because they are the majority. But we do want to acknowledge that it is perfectly normal.
Perfectly normal.
You are the woman and you have the higher sex drive. There's nothing wrong with you. There's nothing wrong with your husband.
Nope.
So
there are times in marriage, though, where sometimes there are issues, and maybe there are some mixed match sex drives, or maybe your sex drive drops off completely, and there's some things that we can talk about that maybe need to be discussed a little bit. There are marriages that have a sexless relationship or a sexless marriage. And technically, a sexless relationship is defined, get this, as a couple that has sex less than once a month or less than 10 times a year. I didn't know if you knew that. It's not just a couple that doesn't have any sex.
No,
A sexless marriage
I was a little surprised by that. I thought maybe it meant, pretty much zero. But yeah, less than 10 times a year is considered a sexless marriage.
Yeah.
So
and so that is kind of interesting. And studies show another thing that we did a little bit of research on and found is about 10% of married population below 50. And I thought that was interesting because you'd think this might be with older couples have not had sex in the past year. And so sexless marriage is something that there are some couples that struggle with this. And if you and your husband, you and your wife are okay going, hey, 10 times a year is plenty with us, there's not anything wrong with that. But if you have a spouse over here going, I need sex, and my spouse is not interested and hasn't been in over a year, some things are going to have to, honestly, if you want your marriage to work right, there's going to have to be some things that take place. You're going to have to get some help for a mixed match sex drive. And we'll talk about some of those things in a minute, because that's not healthy when you've got a spouse begging for some intimacy and they're getting nothing.
Yeah, and I would think that if there are 10 to 15% of the married population below the age of 50 that are not having sex, then there are things that are going on in the marriage that are causing that, for sure. And that probably both both people in the marriage are not on board with that, it's probably causing some serious damage to the marriage.
And I'll throw this in there. This is just kind of a thought on my part. Yes, there are some times if there's some issues in the marriage and you're working through some stuff and you can back off and go, hey, we just need a little time apart. I can understand that. But I will throw this out there that if you are currently using sex or any other need in marriage to punish your spouse by withholding it, if I was mad at Lee likes conversation. If I'm mad at Lee and I just go, hey, for about a year, I don't think I'm gonna talk to her. You're not just hurting your spouse, you're hurting your whole marriage. Your marriage will not heal. It will not get better as long as you are trying to punish your spouse by withholding needs. Now, there are times in relationships where you do need to step back and go, hey, we're having some big problems and maybe this isn't something that is good for us right now. But punishing and withholding a need from a spouse is you're poisoning your present relationship. So sex, since we're talking sexless marriage for a second, some of the reasons for a sexless marriage, I'll throw one out there. We talked about it a little bit last week. Pornography. And a lot of people are surprised at that because some people feel like, I know we talk to people sometimes that go, well, I feel like I've been pushed to pornography because my spouse isn't interested in sex. And that should never be an excuse for that. But pornography is one of those things. In men, people who are addicted to pornography oftentimes have a lower sex drive, or let me just put it this way, a more sexless marriage because they are more turned on by what they can watch on a phone or a computer than what they can do with their wife in their bedroom or a husband. There are women that have the same struggle, so we don't want to pick on the men. And pornography is, if you look at people and you just go, man, their bodies are perfect, but my spouse's body is nothing like this. One of the causes of a sexless marriage is pornography.
Yeah, that's really sad.
Instead of pursuing porn, pursue your spouse.
Exactly.
If this is an issue you're having right now, I encourage you to Google Terry Crews. Terry Crews is a Hollywood TV guy. He's been on a lot of shows. Brooklyn Nine-Nine, I think he's on America's Got Talent.
Yeah.
Terry Crews is very vocal about a pornography addiction that he had, and his story is pretty incredible on how he overcame and kind of what he did to overcome. And I love his words and his story and basically how he learned to have to reprogram his mind to focus on his wife and not on what he was watching on a screen.
Yeah, and there are, I'm glad you brought that up because there's a lot of good material out there. There's a lot of good accountability out there. If this is something you're struggling with, you can find help. Yeah. It's out there.
Resources.
Yes.
Infidelity is another reason, of course, for a sexless marriage. If you're a spouse that has been cheated on, the last thing you probably feel like doing is being intimate with your spouse. And so that is a reason for a sexless marriage oftentimes. Weariness. Do you want to talk about that for a second?
Weariness is a big one, especially when you got young kiddos at home and you're going 90 miles an hour, working a full-time job, keeping up with all their activities, cooking, cleaning, all that kind of stuff, and you're dropping in bed exhausted every night. Weariness and sex can usually be the last thing on your mind when you're just so tired and going 90 miles an hour all the time. So you really have to kind of watch your scheduling when you've got kiddos that are involved in lots of different activities. And, I've often said that it's okay to say no to some really good activities because you have to make sure you have plenty of time for good family time and not just watching your kid on the ball field, but actually interacting with your child is very important, and interacting with your spouse. You need that good quality family time.
You won't find time. You're going to have to make it.
Yes.
Co-sleeping with kids is one of those things that causes a sexless marriage, and we caution folks in our workshops about that. We do know there are people out there that love this. But we find it really hard to imagine how sleeping with your kids every night in your bed can help you be more intimate with your spouse. And so if if they start out in their own bed and show up at 3 o'clock in the morning, that's one thing. But it's another thing that every night you got 3 kids sleeping in your bed at 8:30 at nighttime. That's got to be really tough. And if that's the case, let them sleep in your bed and you go move to their bed. But you start working them out of your bed, because that is not a healthy situation.
Yeah, that's a hard one. Lack of communication can be a cause of a sexless marriage. And we've had a little bit of struggle with this at times. I mean, I guess you've pretty much made it clear to me that you are ready and willing anytime, and so you kind of put the ball in my court.
I have a higher sex drive. I don't know that I like sex better than you, but my sex drive is higher than yours.
Yes, and you kind of just, put the ball in my court, and it's like, well,
let me know.
I would like for you to initiate, and whenever you're in the mood, I'm in the mood. And I think we realized that didn't always work. That when you really were in the mood, you just sometimes needed to say something. So, communicate.
It's very important. Very important. If you have a spouse that's very critical, can be a cause of sexless marriage, because it's really hard to want to be intimate with someone who is constantly hammering you about whatever it is. Yeah. For men, it can be a testosterone issue, something that is simply fixed with a blood test. A lot of men and a lot of wives, we get messages sometimes going, hey, our sex drive was great a year ago, and now my husband's just not interested. And it's very possibly that he has got low testosterone, and it's not just his sex drive, but there's probably other things going on in his world that he needs a blood test and a visit with a doctor. It could be something as simple as medication, high blood pressure medications, cholesterol medications. All of these things sometimes cause low testosterone and erectile deficiency problems.
So guys, go to the doctor and get a physical.
That's right.
There's no shame.
And if it's a girl, if it's a wife, then and you just go, hey, something's wrong with me. I'm just not. Maybe you need to go for a checkup.
There can be lots of issues there causing some things. So yes.
Yeah. And they're not always health problems. Sometimes they are.
There could be some mental issues, going on there. You might have had some things happen in your past that you need to deal with. All kinds of things. So just never be afraid to talk to a doctor, to go see a counselor, to talk to a mentor, and get some help with some things that you might be really struggling with.
Yeah. Well, let's talk about a couple of things that may make folks uncomfortable. And we'll just warn you, if you got your kids in the room, this may get PG-13 for a sec, but we'll bring this up because we get lots of questions about this. Since we're talking about physical and mental problems, sometimes there are people who, for a physical problem, cannot have sexual intercourse. They just can't, for one reason or another. And a lot of couples just automatically think, well, we're done. We'll never do this again, And we want you to understand, there are more options out there than just intercourse. And one of the questions we get sometimes is about oral sex, and something often called, that I didn't actually know how to name for, outer course. Which is it was like, wait, there's a name for that? And so let's talk about that. You can still be intimate with your spouse without intercourse. The Bible says nothing negative about oral sex, yet we have a lot of times Christian people that say that's wrong, right? Let me give you 2 or 3 things, and I'll even share a couple of verses with you. If oral sex was wrong, it would somewhere be prohibited in the Bible, and it's not. It would be unnatural, and it's not. If it was unhealthy or harmful, it's not. If it were unkind, and it's not. In the book of Song of Solomon, and I've just shot off 3 verses here for just a moment. We think in the book of Song of Solomon, there's a husband and wife here that are talking oral sex, both with the man and with the woman. And the first is in the Song of Songs, chapter 2, verse 3, where the wife is actually acting upon her husband, and she says, like an apple tree among the trees of the forest, so is my beloved among the young men. In his shade I took great delight and sat down, and his fruit was sweet to my taste.
A lot of people are like, well, that's in the Bible?
That's in the Bible. And we're talking we're talking sex here, and we're talking oral sex. And then over in chapter 4, verse 16, here's the husband he talks about, and he says, "Awake, north wind, and come, south wind, blow on my garden, that its fragrance may spread everywhere. Let my beloved come into his garden and taste its choice fruits." And again, we're talking sex here. And then let me give you one more. Chapter 5, verse 1 of the Song of Solomon. "I have come into my garden, my bride. I've gathered my myrrh along with my balsam." Yeah, that's a different translation than I'm used to. "And I've eaten my honeycomb and my honeycomb and my honey, and I have drunk my wine and my milk." And then it says, "Eat, friends, drink deeply, O lovers, and enjoy one another." And so we just want you to understand there's manual stimulation, there is oral stimulation, and there is all kinds of things along those lines. We do have a question, and we'll throw this out there just very briefly. Sometimes we get questions about toys or sexual toys in marriage. Do those belong? And in a marriage such as this, is this something we can use to help? And we always just say this: sexual toys are okay. We feel that they are, but not made to replace your spouse, but to participate together. And that's kind of our feelings on this right here. So let's look at a couple of other things for a second. A couple other things that might be on the list of causing sexless marriage before we go on.
Just at the bottom of that list there, stress. And you're going to have periods of stress in your life, in your marriage. And also the feeling that sex is shameful. A lot of us grew up in homes where we were even taught that, and God made sex to be a beautiful gift to marriage. And so
Lee and I grew up in homes where we just didn't talk about it.
Exactly.
And it was kind of
it
was kind of weird, just that if it came on TV, somebody turns it off. And so we had to learn that it was okay to talk about. And it helped our marriage tremendously.
Yeah.
So are there some ways that I can repair maybe a sexless marriage, some things that I can do? How about be open about the topic?
Be open about it. Yes.
Don't be ashamed. Don't point fingers.
Yes.
One of the points we like is go to the gym together. Why would that have anything to do? Why would go in the gym? Because one of the things that we find interesting is, one, going to the gym, going for a walk, well, you can put it that way, exercising together, one, lower stress, and in men increases testosterone. And so sometimes working out together with your spouse, going for a walk together with your spouse, going hiking with your spouse, any of those things is actually healthy for your sex life.
That's awesome. And, taking off a few pounds here and there, that's going to improve your body image, make you feel better about yourself. So that's always a good thing.
Hey, you said something. I'll throw this in here real quick. I'll talk to the men for a second. Body image to men may bother some men, but most men aren't bothered by body image as much as sometimes women are. And husbands, you need to regularly be building your wife up about her body image, telling her she is beautiful. We have been married 31 years, and my wife is still gorgeous. Does she look like the 18-year-old that I married back in 1988?
No.
She's changed a little bit, but she is still absolutely gorgeous. And she needs to hear that. Your wife needs to hear that you are blown away by her curves. You are infatuated by her body. Do not take pop shots at your spouse's body. Do not make fun of her rear end or whatever it is. If you are wanting her to be visually pleasing to you and show her body off to you, you cannot take pop shots about her body. You have to build her up and make her feel good about it.
That's right.
And wives, you may be worried about stretch marks and maybe the fact that you don't look like you're 18 anymore, but your husband probably doesn't notice a fraction of the things that you notice. He just thinks you're gorgeous. So don't beat yourself up too bad. Pay attention to likes and dislikes. Communicate. What did you like? What was good? What felt good? And that's really, really important.
Yeah.
There's a lot of stuff. We've talked about a lot of stuff. What could we say to a couple? What could we say to a couple that maybe are struggling a little bit at this time as a better way to better your sex life in your marriage?
Well, as weird as it may sound, scheduling sex might be a really good first step, and that sounds, strange to some people. It's like, well, it's supposed to be spontaneous, and well, if it's, if you're having a hard time getting it done, then sometimes you just got to put it on the calendar, and just like you would date night. So there's no shame in that, and I've said it's really helpful for women a lot of times to know that it's scheduled, because we have to prepare ourselves mentally. We really do. And that helps us, just to be able to be prepared and to not be so tired and whatever, comes along with that. So.
Yeah. And you may think, hey, scheduling sex doesn't sound a whole lot of fun, but scheduled sex is better than no sex.
That's right.
And so that's definitely a better thing. And there's a lot of anticipation that can build up to it. Another way to better your sex life is to maybe go on an overnight trip together. Make it a fun overnight trip. Make it a sexy overnight trip. Make sure you don't drag into the hotel at midnight exhausted. Go back early. If you got a hotel room or a bed and breakfast, get back there early. Spend some time together. Make sure that works. Make sure that you don't have something scheduled that next morning for a 7 a.m. wake-up call. Find some time to spend some time to go, hey, we schedule doctor's appointments. We schedule kids to do this. We schedule kids to do this. So let's say, hey, tomorrow morning we're going to spend some time together and do that.
That's right. And then I think one of the very best ways, and we've said it multiple times throughout this episode, is to communicate. Just communicate, talk about it. It's okay. It's essential, actually, to talk about sex with your spouse.
God's not embarrassed by it. You shouldn't be embarrassed by it. You and your spouse should be able to have a conversation about it, and that is totally okay. That's a healthy thing. That is a healthy thing. Good topic. We covered a lot of good stuff today. I like talking stuff like this.
Well, it's important.
It is.
I can honestly say I was not looking forward to this. It's not as fun as some of our episodes that we've done.
Really?
But just for me, I don't know. Maybe because, I don't know, just it's kind of a private area.
I understand.
But,
I
yeah.
can see that.
But
a little uncomfortable.
It's important for people to educate themselves on the topic. So
that's right.
Yeah.
So we'll cover it.
We went a little longer than we usually do, but I think that's okay too.
I think it is too. We're glad y'all hang out with us. We appreciate it. If you follow us on a streaming network that will let you leave a rating or a comment, we would love for you to leave us a good rating so that we can get the message of healthy marriages out more when people search for something on marriage. And we just appreciate it so much. Thanks for hanging out with us. We'll be back next week. I actually don't have I think I might have a list of kind of what we're going to talk about
next week.
Next week. We are working so hard. No, don't have it. We're working so hard to try, and we've made a schedule. We're sticking to the schedule, and we're going to talk about certain things each week. And we're gonna do it each Wednesday or Thursday, and we are not gonna miss. And so I'm excited about that part. If you signed up for Lubbock, Texas, we're excited about you coming in July 10th and 11th, isn't it? Yep, Lubbock, Texas. Yep, going to be good. Next week, rebuilding some trust when trust is lost for whatever reason it is. And we're going to talk a little bit about that. Another huge question we get about stuff. And so we'll talk about that week. Thank you, Miss Morgan, for sharing some things that are maybe a little bit private for you and hanging out with me. I like doing this. And let's get out the sheet music book or a calendar and do some scheduling, right? Yeah, there you go. Y'all have a great day. Thanks for hanging out with us, and we will see you next week.